Welcome back, everyone. This is Corporate Talk with Charlie and Eva, and our guests today are Bonnie and Thomas Leota. They are the creators of the Creating Champions for Life home study system, and you can find out more about Bonnie and Thomas by going to their website at creatingchampionsforlife.com. So I've been really loving our conversation because it's just such a grounded, relaxed way to raise a family, right? I mean, there's just no fighting. That's just not how we grew up.
I'm sure, it's complicated enough, right?
It is complicated, right? Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? I mean, if everybody was just raised in this, like you said in the beginning, right? If everybody was raised in such a really calm, nurturing environment, it's just amazing what you could accomplish, because your whole life would just be focused on moving forward and not freaking out about just the day-to-day stuff to get through the day.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
It really is.
And I know you have a question.
Yeah, I have a question, guys, from what we were talking about, and it kind of ties in a little bit to everything. We learned about the anger and how to deal with that, and it's really a message, I guess, that the child is trying to send. So with your collaborative methods and the improvement that you see, does it mean that some of the diagnosis that we may get for our children may not be correct? They may just be symptoms, and through some of your programs, they can actually reverse some of those. And I don't want to make light of issues, but something like ADD, say, or something like that. I mean, does that gain from your programs?
Yeah, I'd like to actually comment on that, because when I met Tom, the psychologist told me that my youngest son has had the worst case of oppositional defiant disorder that she had ever seen. Get a picture, a 7-year-old child getting angry, having a temper tantrum in his class, throwing his desk, and when the teacher went to go grab his arm or whatever, he jumped off on the desk, went from desk to desk to desk, out the door, and locked himself in the bathroom. So this is what I was dealing with. He was diagnosed with ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder, and not a light case. It was bad. And what I realized in just the fact that we began to teach him life skills. Now, here's my son. My brain is broken. You can't expect me to, produce what all the other kids produce, because, I'm sick and my brain's broken. I have a disease, all right? Now, I didn't realize that it was things that I was doing to create the opposition and the ADHD. So, yes, I will go on air and record myself. Can it be reversed? Absolutely, yes, it can be reversed. They are symptoms. In fact, the grandfather of ADHD himself, on his deathbed, said that ADD was a great example of a fictitious disease. And you can look that up. You can Google ADD or ADHD being a fictitious disease, and you can read it right from the actual founder of the disease itself.
Speechless. Excellent. So that is amazing, right? That's life-changing.
Well, it is life-changing, but yet, I mean, we have some experience with it.
We do.
And we're finding that, especially when it's been diagnosed in adults, that, there is something to that inability to focus. Right?
Yes. Because kids aren't being taught life skills. They're not being taught focus. They're not being taught, you see, focus and self-control. Those are life skills. And when you're not taught life skills, then you're going to show symptoms of ADHD in school. And if you're still not taught life skills, if you're just medicated to change the behavior, then you, yes, will become an adult diagnosed with ADHD.
Which is
Absolutely.
The natural progression of the answer, which is what she's just saying, makes perfect sense. Right?
It does, but I know that there'd be a lot of people that get ticked off by that. And I'm not saying that it's not wrong, but Bonnie, I'm sure that you have people saying, no, that you're wrong on this. But I agree absolutely 100% on the having to teach life skills, because just medicating without the life skills doesn't really work. That doesn't work. I would agree.
What treats the symptoms. But I think what Bonnie's saying is in support of the diagnosis, they're doing their share to help the root cause possibly in teaching those skills, right? The life skills.
I agree.
And I think it's really cool. So yeah, interesting.
I think what else is interesting, and I'm kind of going through some of the questions here that we have. And one of the things that I know you talk about is that timeouts really don't do more harm than good. And I know when I first started learning about timeouts when I was younger and my friends were first having children, everybody was using a timeout, right? I mean, that was the big thing. Put them in timeout, put them in timeout. It seemed like a saner, gentler way to let everybody just take a minute, take a breath, and have a moment without, yelling or punishing. But I know you're saying that you don't think timeouts are good. So why is that? I guess that's my question.
I'd like to take that one here real quick, if I may. And I'd like to just use the analogy of thinking of it as a timeout by throwing more gas on a fire thinking it's going to go out. It's just going to be something that's going to feed to the underlying cause. And so if you look at just in general, society will look at it and go, well, every kid's different. My kid's this, my kid's that. Well, okay. Let's take that at face value because over 1,500 years ago, it was a scientific fact that the earth was flat. And if you said anything contradictory to that, well, you got ridiculed and probably violently opposed. 500 years ago, it was a scientific fact that the earth was the center of the universe. Galileo was on house arrest until he actually passed away. So you get those examples. And probably before this show, 5 or 20 minutes, maybe an hour ago, you probably thought that timeouts was an effective tool because that's what other people did. That's what you get enough opinions together, it becomes a fact until you get something to change or somebody brings a new light to the subject. Now, here's a lady that she had her 10-year-old son, and he had fetal alcohol syndrome, right? So his brain was, she described it as, well, it's like Swiss cheese. There's holes. There's parts of his brain missing. He's not going to be like the other kid. He had Asperger's. He had the ADD. Okay, well, great. So what can you do? Even a child that was born without any teeth can still smile. It might look different than a kid with teeth. So this whole timeout concept, well, he gets a little bit overstimulated, and we got to do a timeout and calm him down. Well, guess what, Mom? And this is what I'm seeing. And I asked, can I have permission to tell you straightforward what I see? She said, yes. Are you sure? Because what I'm going to say is not going to be a soft pillow. It's going to be the fact of what I'm seeing. Well, you are causing your child to require a timeout, which still isn't working by pouring more gas on the fire. She said, okay, well, fine. What can I do? Thank you. That's the window we're looking for.
I was just going to say that. That was an amazing answer. I'm surprised.
Yes, and so this child was on the ranch, and he was going to be climbing on the fence, and the mom kept saying, get down, get down, get down. You can't do that. If you do that, we're going to have to do a timeout. You're just not listening. Well, I asked him, I said, well, what is it that you want to do with the horses? I want to feed them. Woo, what would you feed them? I went through all those questions. I found out what was important to the child. Well, good. This is what you can do. If your feet stay on the ground, that's what you like to do to be able to feed the horses. If you stand on the fence, that's what you do to say, I'm not interested in feeding the horses. Once again, what was it that you would like to do? I want to feed them. So where should your feet be? On the ground. Where would your feet be if you wanted to stop feeding the horses? On the fence. See, I implanted an environment that allowed him to, what is it that he wants to do, and then what can he do to make his dream come true? And she said, well, that might work for 5 minutes, but he'll forget. Well, an hour passed. The child still was on the ground, no power struggle, feeding the horses all day long, and he actually was out of sight from the parent, and he never secretly jumped up on the fence because he was showed what he can do and what does work, which automatically changed the cause, create a different effect.
Unbelievable. I know you guys because we met, and I know that you're very tough, right? And I don't know what to say, but the way you approach your subject matter expertise is just so unbelievably positive. You make it look easy.
Well, but the key is that what Thomas and Bonnie now do is they take the time to talk to the child, right? And explain. And So there's a certain level of skill and patience that's involved in that, because sometimes it's easier to get angry and say stop instead of taking that minute and going through the questions and really getting down to the root of what that child needs.
Right, that's a skill. That's a skill in itself, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to add one more thing, and Bonnie and Thomas, right? They're the classic example of providing others what they don't know they need.
Yes.
So in other words, you have all the examples, all of the symptoms of the temper tantrums or the ADHD or the fetal alcoholism, and we need the medication and the therapy. Well, we need Bonnie and Thomas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we don't even know what we need, and that's what they're providing.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's perfect.
It's kind of sad, right, guys? Because the whole world needs to hear you, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. And one key thing is that let's get back to the point of what is our role as a parent. See, that's the number one question that I'll always ask a parent when they say, hey, can you fix my kid? Something's wrong, or whatever it is. And if they don't have a clear understanding, well, then that could be a cornerstone of what is part of the cause. Because once a parent really knows that their job is not to buy them things, it's not to make them happy, it's not to be their servant and do cook, cleaning, and everything until they're in college and still have them bring laundry home after a quarter of college. It's to instill their life experience of life skills. Take any other animal in nature, and the mom teaches a set of life skills, so the bird or the bunny or the horse or whatever it is can now be on their own. It's a process of self-efficiency. So from the age of, say, 1 up to age 18, the child is looking at you for life skills. That's our job. And anything that they want to do, we're there to support, but they don't know how to do it yet. That's our key role. Let me teach you what's the best way, and then let them take action and struggle. Don't do it for them by overcompensating, which causes all kinds of issues, but let them struggle and learn that authentic life skill of perseverance to turn an obstacle into an opportunity to always be able to reach their goal. And that's the fundamental key process, that when you lose that cycle of life right there, well, that's where disorders come into play. And the word dis just means not, which is the opposite of order. So if you're out of that circle, you'll have a disorder. Change the cause, get back in the circle, everything goes into the order, and you actually dis the dis.
Excellent.
That's terrific. So we're going to take our last and final break, and when we come back, we will wrap up. But stay with us, everyone. This is Corporate Talk with Charlie and Eva and our guests, Bonnie and Thomas Leota, and we'll be right back.